Welcome to Hour 2 of the Midwest #1 weekly motorsports show, Track Talk, on the RacinBoys Broadcasting Network. Brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Once again, here's Scott Traylor and Kirk Elliott.
Welcome back. It's Track Talk here on RacinBoys Radio, on RacinBoys.com. We want to thank everybody to follow us over. Don't forget, hour number 2, like hour number 1, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet, home of the $10,000 price guarantee. If you're not a good negotiator, go out there because you're going to get the best deal you can on any car that's in stock. I promise you, folks, you're not going to get a better deal anywhere than McCarthy Chevrolet. Check them out at McCarthyChevrolet.com and make sure you tell them the Racing Boys sent you. All right, let's just get right into it, Kirk. Hour number 1 was very interesting. We talked to Archie Simpson and Colin Strasburg of the Missouri, Sergeant Colin Strasburg, Sergeant of the Missouri Highway Patrol, was on with us hour number 1. Did you learn anything from the Highway Patrolman there, Kirk? What was your first thoughts after talking to him?
Well, that there wasn't a full-fledged investigation like some people were saying, the same as if they were investigating a highway accident. That did not take place.
Because you and I both thought that might have been a good enough reason to cancel the event.
Right, because they taped off the area as though it were an accident out on the highway or something,
right.
But that is not the type of investigation that went on. There was no investigation by the Highway Patrol that went on, so I did learn that. But probably the most important thing of the last hour that I learned was from Archie Simpson, who said that if that car had gone 10 feet to the left and hit that ASCS trailer where 10 or 15 drivers were standing down there and people for the redraw, that how much I just shuddered to think how much worse that could have been had that car turned to the left about 10 feet.
Right.
That
well,
was
and
shocking.
you know, it's funny that Archie brought that up because Scotty and I were traveling last night after we finished up in Salina, Oklahoma, and that was something that I brought up to him. I said, just think about it. If he's a little bit to the left, he hits the ASCS trailer, and not only are those people that are congregating around that area, but there was people between the trailer and the fence, and they would have been pinned.
Yeah.
They would have been struck with the trailer behind them. They would have had no room to run. So as bad as the accident was, and you hate to use the word freak accident, but that's exactly what it was, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, you go back and, you know, I did a little research this week about the accident in 1965 that Bill Crane was involved in, racing down there at the fair, going into turn 1. From what I've been told, the police report said it was a tire went flat, but from what I've been told, a tie rod end came loose on Bill Crane's car, sending him into an area where fans, there is some debate if it was a restricted area or not. A piece of twine was trying to keep people back from an area that some call restricted area, but nevertheless there were some people in this area, and this is where Bill Crane went into the crowd down there. Unfortunately for that accident, 4 people lost their life, 14 people were severely injured, and I will tell you, I had a very, very candid conversation with Bill Crane, probably 1992 or 1993. We were traveling together. We were going to an ASA race with A.J. Cooper as the driver. His dad, J.L. Cooper's brother, Jerry, Bill Crane, and myself were traveling together. I think we were headed up to Flint, Michigan or something like that. I can't remember. And he told me that story. And let me tell you, folks, all these years later, that was 1965, so this was 1992 or 93. All these years later, it just terribly upset Bill Crane. And, I mean, to the point where he was teary-eyed about it. And he gave me a little, and I won't go into the details because it was pretty horrifying what happened. But he did tell me he got out of the car, he was dazed, and all he could sense was people were really injured, and he was like in a state of shock. So when we think about the grand scheme of things, my point is that this could have been a much more horrific wreck down there. No, it's not good, the people that were injured, and we don't want to forget about Jordan Creason as well, because he was part of that the people that got injured down there that night. But it could have been a lot worse, folks. We just got to think of it and try to find some positives out of what happened and work off the positives and do the things that we need to do to make this racetrack safer. That's the first and foremost thing we've got to do. We've got to look, all right, we're lucky nobody lost their lives. Now what do we do so we can keep the state fair open? And that's the direction I think, Kirk, people need to move in.
And you mentioned Bill Crane from that horrific accident at the state fairgrounds in 1965. You know, we've talked about all the other victims, and certainly thinking about Mark Quisenberry especially, who had his leg amputated after this accident. I'm pretty certain everybody else will recover. But I'm also thinking about Tyson Russell, 25 years old, from out of Crocker, Missouri. He was the driver of that race car. This will be with him for the rest of his life, and he didn't mean to do this. He didn't mean for this accident to happen. But I'm thinking about him right now because he's an upstanding member of the law enforcement agencies that were a part of this race down there. And he's just got to be feeling awful about what happened down there.
No, I agree with you, Kirk. This is something that is, Bill Crane, all these years later, how he felt about it. There's no doubt that he's going to feel the same way for the rest of his life. And fortunately enough for him, nobody was lost their life, but still injuring people, costing a man his leg, and injuring people, breaking ankles and shoulders and what have you. That's still, I will tell you this. Could you imagine what was going through his head as he realized he was going through that guardrail and that fence and knowing that those people were there?
Yeah.
I would not want to think what my mind would be telling me at that point. And if you look at that video very close, he gets out of that car in a hurry, and you can tell he is visibly upset. And then there's not much of a shot there because they kind of pull away. But you see him come out of the car with his white helmet on, his red fire suit, and you can tell that he is in kind of a panic mode, and rightly so. And you're right, Kirk. We need to think about him. Though he wasn't a victim as far as physically, he is definitely going to be a mental victim from that accident.
No, there's no question about that. So we're thinking about all of these people that were involved. We talked about Mark Quisenberry, Leela Wood, Jesslyn Dagonia, Barry Smith, and Archie Simpson. We had on the last hour all of those people involved in that accident, and there were a number of other people that were close by. It was very fortunate that we had the first responders and the emergency medical personnel on the scene as we did. Everybody performed in a flawless manner when it comes to emergency medical personnel in the aftermath of this event. But Scott, I think the reason why we even bring, and I hadn't really thought about discussing this accident in as great a detail as we have this morning until we had a post on our forum board talking about the races. The drivers should have been paid. The races should have went on. All of these things that never really ever occurred to me as I'm driving out of the state fair on Sunday night. Those things just weren't really in the forethought of my mind, whether the drivers got paid or whether they continued on. In my mind, witnessing this accident from the grandstand, there was no question they were going to call this race off. It was pushing 10 o'clock anyway. They were down for more than an hour with the Jordan Creason incident. They were not going to push that show past midnight and try to finish that off. There was just no way that was going to happen, and I knew that sitting up in the grandstand. So anybody who witnessed that accident, and by the way, I did not hear a murmur of dissent, no complaints whatsoever from where I was in the grandstand about the decision to call that race off. Anybody who witnessed that accident firsthand, like I did, and thousands of other people up in that grandstand, did not complain about those races getting called off. Frankly, after I saw that, and in the aftermath of everything else that went on that night, I'm thinking I just want to go home. And I think most people thought about that, and most people in the grandstands thought the very same thing as I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will be honest with you, and John Farmer has started a topic whose decision was it to call the races and not pay anybody anything, in bold print, anybody anything. I will tell you, I thought it was in poor taste, to be honest with you. The timing.
Well, it's just not something that I'm thinking about. It's just not an important. It's not important at that moment. It's just not very important at that moment.
Well, and
or
I
any
think our
time
poll
after.
indicates that 60% of the people feel that it was okay. Now, Kirk, I don't know. I mean, it is I hate to say this, but in a way, I kind of understand what John was wanting to get at there. I think his timing was wrong about talking about the winnings. It was just, I think it was before I went to bed that night. It was posted up.
Well, frankly, I didn't care if the drivers ever got paid from that event down there. It doesn't matter to me at all.
Me neither. Me neither. But at the same time, as somebody that has expenses of beating up and down the road, I understand why some might think like that. We're not all wired the same. But whatever money that I had paid to get down there, if the state fair, if the fair board has any money left over afterwards, they need to give every penny to the injured people that were down there in the racetrack.
Yes.
Every penny. If there's any profit at all, and I can't believe there would be any profit, but they did get concession stands, so there could be some profit there. But I think every penny, if there's anything left over, because you know, Kirk, you know good and well, a lot of people didn't get are not going to get the refund, or even going to ask for it.
Yeah, I would. If I paid money,
I wouldn't ask for it.
There'd be no way I'd write in for a refund for my ticket. It's just no way. First of all, I wouldn't even be thinking about it. It wouldn't even enter my mind. You know, it's just something I'm not thinking. I mean, my first and foremost thoughts are with Mark Quisenberry and Leela Wood and Jesselyn Degonia, Barry Smith, and Archie, and also my thoughts with Tyson Russell. That's all I care about right now. And Jordan Creason especially. Those are the people. That's the only things on my mind as I'm driving out of there. I could care less if I paid money for a grandstand ticket if I ever got it back. And I certainly wouldn't spend the time to go ask for a refund. But that's just me. I'm just speaking for myself. And to even think about it, I don't even think about the drivers. Will they get paid? Will they run the race later? Yeah. I don't care. I really don't care.
No, and I don't either, Kirk. Don't take it wrong. I don't care either. In fact, it bothers me a little bit that some drivers feel that way, but I also know some drivers expect to make a little money so they can get back home too. So, but when I was down in the pits, Kirk, when they called the race, I was sitting right behind Karen Darling as she made the announcement along with Clint Brown to the drivers. They summoned them all up to the tower. During that moment when they were discussing what was going to take place and how they were going to cancel the race and how they were going to give back everybody's money and how you turn in your armband and mail it in and how that was all going to take place, I didn't hear one driver complain.
No. Well,
now I did hear. I will say I did hear one guy, and maybe jerk would be a good word for it, hollered something about, well, the damn guardrail's too low. That wasn't the time to do that. It wasn't the time to start pointing fingers and yelling at people saying, hey, you know, the guardrail's too low. That's why we're not going to race tonight, because that's the way I.
You know what? We're all to blame about that guardrail. Did I go down there and point that out to somebody? Hey, that guardrail's got dirt over it. I didn't go.
Well,
I didn't
fair,
think
Kirk,
to go down there and look at it. So did nobody else did either.
Kirk, somebody that was preparing that track or somebody that was in charge of that event should have looked at that area. It's not the fans. It's not the media's job to go down there and look at that stuff and make sure it works. Now it's glaring now. We see it now that the dirt is piled up down there at the guardrail and it made it really short. But that shouldn't be our job. It should be to the people that are working the track, putting the blade to it, that are pulling the dirt down to the bottom. They need to get that blade back up and run that dirt back up the track. And let me ask you, Kurt, do you think, honestly, deep down in your heart, do you think that the fair race will ever open again? They'll have a race at the fair.
Oh, boy.
I mean, if you have to go yes or no and no maybes, yes or no, do you think they'll open up the fair again?
I've thought a lot about that over the last week, and I've gone back and forth both ways on that whole question. And if you're asking me for my gut reaction now, nearly 1 week after this happened, my gut tells me that probably not. We'll probably not see another race at the state fair. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about
you
that.
Are too, Kirk.
But I'm thinking probably not.
Well, I will tell you, Kirk, I agree with you. I agree with you, and I'll tell you why I agree with you. I think I agree with you mostly because I don't think that the Fair Board will want to spend the money that it takes to do the capital improvements to make all areas safe at the racetrack.
Well,
I think that's what it's going to boil down to. I think that it's going to come right down to, all right, what do we got to do to make this place right? And you got to think of the walls and the fencing and the infield, protecting the people in the infield. There's a lot of dollars that are going to have to be spent, and I'm just not sure the state of Missouri is going to be willing in these tough times in our economy to step up and spend the money so they can have a couple races a year at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like I say, I mean, that's a great facility down there. It would be certainly sad if we did not see another race at the Missouri State Fair, but I think we both agree. I mean, we've been around the fairgrounds for a long time now. We've these are our opinions based on our observations over what's gone on for the last many years, and I think we both agree. Probably not, but we're going to get into more of this. We'll take some calls a little bit later on, but you know what?
Let's let the listeners know, Kirk, that we did reach out to Clint Brown, a good friend of the RacinBoys, works his ass off at trying to make that event come off good. A lot of stress last Sunday and leading up to that event. We asked him to come on the show, but right now they are not allowing anybody that is directly connected to the event to speak to any media types or anything like that. Is that correct?
That is correct. He's not allowed to say anything right now, and as far as I can tell, Clint Brown did nothing wrong. Neither did any of the race officials or members of the sanctioning bodies involved. All of the right decisions were made, in my opinion, and Clint Brown did all he could. And if you want to pass blame to anybody, pass it along to the Missouri State Fair Board, who made all the final decisions on what went down there the other night. But I don't see why that is useful to anybody at this point.
Kirk, you and I were both talking about that. We thought that was it because there was going to be some kind of legal investigation down there, and now we know that wasn't the case. Was the call still the right call by the Fair Board?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, they made the only call they could make, in my opinion. So, anyway, we're you know what? I was so happy when I walked out of Lakeside Speedway last night because I saw one of the great nights of racing that I've seen all season long. All 4 of the feature events went right down to the wire, about as thrilling of finishes as you'll ever find at any racetrack last night. And one of those occurred in the Grand National Division, where point leader Darren Kling made a late move to win. Looked like it was Tim Shields' race, but unfortunate for him, there was a green-white checker finish, a yellow flag coming out on the white flag lap. He had the race won, and on the restart, it was Darren Kling that found his way out in front, and a very emotional win last night. Darren, thanks for joining us this morning, and it was an emotional victory for you last night. Just tell us the circumstances around how this win last night was so special to you.
Yeah, it's very special to me. I had a childhood friend that I grew up next door to pass away Wednesday morning, so this race was dedicated to him, and to win and get that meant the world to me.
Well, Aaron, take us through those final laps there. I mean, at any moment when you were racing out there and you battling for the win, did you was that in your mind itself? Just take us through that. How did you hold your emotions together towards the end of that race?
It was hard. You're focused on what the job at hand, but you're thinking too. And I lost a friend, and it really means the world to me to win this for him. And as we come out of 4 there, emotions ran hard, and as we crossed the line, that's all I could think of was my dear friend I just lost. It's a pretty rough night, but at the same time joyful.
Well, I want to hear about your friend. He's a real hero, isn't he? Talk about him.
Yeah, he was a good friend. We grew up together, door to door there, and all the years of kids playing football, baseball, basketball, trading cards, video games. It just all the fun you had, all the trouble you got in together. It just.
What's his name? Tell us about him.
His name was Josh Williams. He was a fellow guy. We went to Baser Linwood schools together. Lost him tragically Wednesday morning. And just the kid was a stud, as I call it, when it come to playing sports, and just a good friend, a happy-go-lucky guy that could always bring a smile to a room.
How did he pass? Do you mind me asking? Had he been sick, or was he in an accident, or?
He had an accident deal that happened, a tragic deal. So.
Yeah. Well, we're thinking about him. We're thinking about you. And, you know, sometimes God works in mysterious ways, and he meant for you to win that race last night. After we saw how everything turned out. I mean, here's Gary Donaldson making a run up around the high side. Looked like he was just going to roar up in front and win it. And then he comes spinning out and backs it across the finish line in second, spinning out. I mean, it looked like he was going to be the guy. And I mean, just fate just intervened. Here comes Kelby Ostrander, and this all happens after this yellow flag. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was a bizarre finish, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You know, that, like we said earlier, that was Tim's race there, and that caution got him, you know, for what happened. And he pushed up out to there and opened the door for me, and I come inside and thinking, man, I got a chance of this. And all of a sudden, Gary come flying by on the high side. Where in the world did you come from? So it made for an interesting deal. And we went into turn 3 there side by side, and I knew it was going to be a great race there towards the end.
Well, you've got several weeks. I mean, they extended the season now. You're the points leader. It's still up in the air, but there's like 5 more nights of racing yet to go this year. The season's a little bit longer than we've seen in the past at Lakeside. There's still a lot going to happen. How do you approach this now? I mean, it's already nervous time to try to win this championship now, but how do you attack it? You just try to keep doing what you're doing now? How much do you think about the points?
You got to go in and do this one race at a time, and 5 races left of points is a lot of racing that's left, and the unknown of what can happen to is around each corner of the racetrack. So you got to go in and just approach it the way you've been approaching it week in, week out. And if you let the points deal consume you, it'll get to you, and you'll start messing up. So you just try to keep going race by race.
Now, you told me last night after the race that this is all or nothing. I mean, you got to win this championship now because you're in business for yourself. You've been real busy with that. That you're just not certain how much more you're going to race after this year. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not really wrong. I mean, I still want to race each year, but you know, I'm starting out a business this year, and I am severely busy. I've been working 7 days a week and approaching around 70 to 80 hours a week, and it's become super hard to run a business those kind of hours and to keep a race car ready for each week to go out and win races and a championship. So next year, I'm probably going to have to cut back on my schedule till I can get, work schedule worked out better where I can be more to my race car. So it's all or nothing right now for me.
Yeah, already putting in 80
Darren,
hours a week.
I was going to say, I've ran for points championships before in those last 4 or 5 weeks. That's when it, you talk about just doing what you do each and every week, but you get down to those final handful of weeks, man, it gets pretty intense. You having a hard time sleeping at night or anything?
Oh, yeah, there's nights that get to you, and there's on the back of your head, you're thinking of everything. Did I check this? Did I check that on the car? Did I go over this 3 or 4 times? It's
right.
just, it wears on you, but at the same time, you can't let it totally consume you, and it'll make you a basket case, and then you're no good to yourself to go out and race.
Well, last night is a prime example that a lot of this is really out of your control. I mean, that was just unbelievable how things worked out last night, that there's so much of this winning points championships is really not in your control.
Yeah, and anybody that knows racing, luck is a big part of racing, and you never know what's going to happen. But, man, luck's a thing you got to have. And I've been lucky this year and I missed 2 wrecks there, last night. The opening lap, Baker spinning across the nose there, then that car spun and hit Tim, looking at the video, he barely missed me too, so I've been pretty lucky.
Unbelievable. Well, congratulations on the win last night. That's your 4th win of the year, and a very special night indeed, thinking about your friend, and we'll look forward to talking to you down the road. It's going to get exciting from now till the middle of October, that's for sure.
Yes, sir, it is, and I'm looking forward to giving it all we got.
Hey, Darren, let me ask you this. How'd you like racing on TV with Metro Sports? That's pretty cool this year, wasn't it?
that was more than cool. Words can't put into it. You know, I've always felt our sport has never got the recognition that it deserves, and racers are such a great group of people, and we're such a close-fit group, and to see us finally get some recognition, that's what meant the world to me, you know, to let people see what racing's about. I've got new fans that never were race fans, didn't understand it, never would come to a race, but now they watched it every week and are hooked.
Yeah.
Well, especially after what they saw last night.
We got to thank those folks over at Time Warner Cable, because the fact is that they didn't have a lot of sponsorship. They took their money out of their own pocket to do that, and I think everybody should send them a letter or something saying that, hey, thanks for what you did and getting us that exposure, because they took on the cost themselves. And, boy, in today's world, you just don't see that very often.
No, we don't, and we owe them a big thank you for that. You know, that's
yeah.
just, it hit, you know, it touches me for having to do that. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Darren, thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on the big win last night.
All right. Thanks, guys, and thanks for talking to me.
You're welcome. There he is,
All
the
right.
points leader.
Congratulations.
Darren Kling. You bet.